All right, so today we're talking about Sarah McGrath's chapter on moral knowledge. Here's McGrath. She's currently at Princeton, which you may have heard of. It's a smart place. And she's got a book on the same topic as her essay on moral knowledge, same title as well. So if you really want to go deeper, check that out. Now, here's her question. By the way, let me preface this by saying that McGrath is not going to leave us with answers. What she's going to do is review questions that we've already encountered, some in metaethics, raise some possible solutions, and then raise a whole bunch more problems. So really, this is just more food for thought for you, but it won't. She's not exactly defending a position, at least in this chapter. Okay, so here's her starting point. The question is, do we have any moral knowledge? Do we really know anything about what's right and wrong? Do we have more than just beliefs? Do we have justified true beliefs about knowledge? On the one hand, you might think, yeah, I do know a bunch of stuff. I've got a lot of moral knowledge. I know that stealing is wrong. Returning lost wallets is right. On the other hand, and easy stuff like that. On the other hand, there's a lot of tough questions about morality that people disagree with, seemingly people of goodwill. You know, they disagree about whether torture is ever permissible. What if you can save 1 million people by torturing one? Or they disagree about abortion. They disagree about obligations to future generations and so forth. So, you know, when we think about the controversial questions, we might think, well, I don't know. Maybe we don't have moral knowledge. The question is, how much moral knowledge do we really have, if we have any? And if we do have moral knowledge, where does it come from? Okay, so to clarify this, moral philosophy is the broad topic we're talking about. That's just philosophy that deals with questions about how we should treat others. Epistemology is the specific area that we're kind of taking up. Epistemology in general concerns questions about knowledge. We talk about this more in the 101 course, Introduction to Philosophy. But questions about moral epistemology in particular include questions like, where does moral knowledge come from? How do we get answers to our moral questions? And what should I do when people of goodwill and intelligence disagree with each other on moral issues? How do I decide who's right? All right. What are the possible sources of moral knowledge? Well, you might think that maybe moral knowledge comes from the same place as scientific knowledge comes from. That is, from empirical observation, from looking around at the world. Now, as we've seen people from Hume to Harman argue, philosophers think that moral claims can't be tested in this way. They can't be confirmed by observation. Observation plays a role in the way we think about morality, but it doesn't really settle ultimate moral issues. So, for example, you know, let's say that we know it's wrong to encourage children to smoke. There's an empirical component of that claim. We know from observation that smoking is harmful to people's health. And so we conclude from that that it's wrong to encourage children to smoke. But that observational premise that it's wrong to encourage children, the observational premise that smoking is harmful to health by itself doesn't actually settle the moral question. It only settles the moral question when you combine it with this moral premise. And the ultimate moral premise is it's wrong to encourage children to do things that are detrimental to their health. That's the moral premise. And that premise, that ultimate moral premise, that's not one that you can get just from observation. So the point is, even though observation plays a role in how we think about particular moral questions, it doesn't seem to be able to confirm or provide support for our ultimate principles. Now, there have been philosophers who have thought otherwise. For example, John Stuart Mill, who we'll talk about later. Mill was a utilitarian, and he thinks that the right action is the action that produces the most happiness for the greatest number of individuals. Now, I could go out scientifically and measure what actions make people the most happy. Does it make them happier when I give them all cotton candy or when I starve them to death? Well, I think cotton candy's going to win on that one. So I can measure that kind of thing observationally. And so Mill thinks, look, since morality just consists in facts about what makes people happy, we can settle all scientifically through observation. Done deal. This is easy. There is no big question of moral epistemology. Now, whether utilitarianism is the right normative theory or not, a lot of philosophers think that Mill is confused about how we can settle moral questions. And here's why. George Moore, at the beginning of the 20th century, gave a famous open question argument against Mill in his way of settling moral questions. The idea that we could settle them through scientific observation. So he says, even if I do know that an action produces the greatest happiness, say giving people cotton candy, that produces the most happiness, I can still ask the question, but is it right to give people cotton candy? Is that the right thing to do? I know it makes them happy, but is it right? Now, Moore says, if we can still meaningfully ask whether the action is right, even though we know that it produces the most happiness, then that means that we can't know that Mill's utilitarian principle is correct. Let me see if I can put this another way. If let's say that we say, okay, all bachelors are unmarried men. That's what the word bachelor means, right? To be a bachelor is an unmarried man. If somebody came up to you and asked, hey, are there any married bachelors? You know what you would conclude? You would conclude you must not know what that word means. Because if you knew what that word meant, if you knew what a bachelor was, you would never ask, are there any married bachelors? And here's Moore's point. Mill must be wrong about what moral facts are, because it makes perfect sense to ask, hey, are the actions that produce most happiness, are those the right actions? Moore thinks that's a perfectly sensible question. But if by definition the right action was what makes the most people the most happy, then that question wouldn't make sense. It would be like asking, hey, are there any married bachelors? But nobody thinks you're crazy for asking, hey, is the action that produces the most happiness, is that really the right one? The mere fact that it's an intelligible question means Mill's definition is wrong. If Mill's definition of morality was right, then it would be like asking whether bachelors are married to question it, but it's not. Now, Moore thinks that this basic criticism, the open question argument, that applies not just to Mill's particular version of his particular definition of what's right in terms of these natural properties. It also applies to any other definition you might try to give of what's morally right and wrong, if that definition is based only on natural properties of the sort that science can apprehend. So here's the upshot of this. Moore's open question argument seems to undermine or to defeat any possible attempt to define morality in terms of properties that natural science can observe. Okay, so we've ruled out, it looks like there are good reasons to reject the idea that we can settle morality or find moral properties through observation. Well, if we're going to ditch observation, what about intuition? Could intuition be the source of our moral knowledge? Now, what do I mean by intuition? I mean your really strong gut instincts. You just have a gut instinct that it's just wrong to steal. It's just wrong to enslave people. Is that a source of moral knowledge? Is that a reliable source of true, an intellectually respectable source of justified beliefs? Well, some people say so. Like, for example, McGrath brings up Thomas Reid, the Scottish common sense philosopher. We'll also see, well, we've also seen that David Enoch makes an appeal to intuition. And we'll see later on that W.D. Ross makes an appeal to intuition. So a lot of philosophers make appeal to intuition as a source of moral knowledge. But you remember John Mackey? He says that is crazy. That is a super weird way of knowing anything. We don't have a reliable faculty of intuition. And A.J. Ayer, he makes this argument. He's like, basically, when you say that you know something intuitively, you're just saying, I have this really strong feeling. And that may be an interesting fact about your psychology, but it doesn't tell us anything about the world. It just tells about your feelings. So he says, if a moral claim rests on an assertion that has purely psychological interest, for example, I just know that torture is wrong, which is a way of saying, I have a really strong feeling that torture is always wrong. If that's what moral claims rest on, then they don't provide us with moral knowledge. But hey, guess what? The moral claims of intuitionists do rest on those kinds of assertions that have purely psychological interest. Therefore, the moral claims of intuitionists cannot provide us with moral knowledge. Nobody cares about your gut instincts. That's how Ayer's argument goes. Now, are there any other options here? Well, here's the route that is the majority position among contemporary ethicists, which is not to say it's true. It's just telling you this is where the conversation is in academic philosophy. Most practicing ethicists rely on the method of reflective equilibrium. Reflective equilibrium. How does this method go? Well, you start out with what they call considered judgments. What are your considered judgments? Those are the moral beliefs about particular situations or general principles that when you are calm, when you are being unbiased and unprejudiced, when you're in a good way to think about these things, you are most sure about. I don't know what those are for you. Maybe it's don't steal. Maybe it's try to make the most people happy. Maybe it's I don't know. Don't enslave people. Maybe it's never lie to mom. Maybe it's obey God. I don't know. Whatever yours are, those are your considered judgments. Now, you don't just stop there and say, "Oh, my considered judgments are true." No. Instead, you try to make your considered judgments all consistent with one another and coherent. You sort out contradictions that might be there between your considered judgments. So, for example, let's say you got one considered judgment is, when I'm calm and unbiased and I'm not influenced by anything prejudicial, I have a strong belief that I should do whatever I can to make the world the happiest place possible. And you also have this belief that I should never lie to mom. Well, guess what? There might be some time, or it's hypothetically possible anyway, that they're lying to mom about certain things might make the world a happier place. Maybe she's better off if she doesn't know what I was up to last night. Maybe the world's a happier place if she doesn't. Well, I've got a conflict between two of my considered judgments. I've got to drop one of them or adjust one of them, right? Maybe now I say, okay, well, my first considered judgment was never lie to mom, but now it's going to be never lie to her, except when it's going to make the world a happier place. Or maybe you adjust the other principle and you say, you know what? Make the world the happiest place possible, except when it involves lying to mom. Or I don't know. Basically, this reflective equilibrium is what you're going for is you're trying to make all of your considered judgments harmonize with one another so that they're all coherent and consistent. Now, one of the big questions about this method that McGrath brings up is, what are these considered judgments? I mean, is there any restrictions on what you might come up with as a considered judgment? And if not, where's this method going to take us to? For example, let's say that one of your considered judgments is you're calm, you're unprejudiced, you're unbiased, you're thinking clearly, and you really think to yourself, sometimes randomly killing people is justified. Well, if that's one of your considered judgments, then you know what? It might go through your whole process of harmonization and might come out at the end as still a winner, right? So you got these like different considered judgments. Make the world the happiest place possible. It's okay to occasionally kill people and don't line them up. Well, when you put it all through your process, you might be like, yeah, it's permissible to randomly kill people, but only when it's going to make the world a happier place. So, and maybe that is, sometimes it does. That's scary though. That can't be right. So the first worry is that this method is too liberal. People can start out with all kinds of considered judgments, and they might survive the process of achieving reflective equilibrium. The other worry is that the method is too strict. Let's say that I just have a considered judgment. Let's say I just have this belief. One of my starting point beliefs is that, say, racism is wrong. But you know what? That might not count as a considered judgment because I have this personal stake in the matter. I'm not unbiased, because if I don't say racism is wrong, then I'm the victim of a racist action. So like I've got a stake in it, and that means I'm prejudiced, and that doesn't count as a considered judgment for me. Right? So that's like, wait a minute, it's too strict. You should let people believe that racism is wrong as a considered judgment, even though they've got a stake in the issue, a stake in the question. Or let's say, for example, here's the example McGrath gives. Maybe you see a toddler lost in the mall, and you just immediately think, well, I need to take them back to their parents. I should protect that child. And that, let's say it's a considered judgment and it counts. Well, do you need to go through a process of reflective equilibrium to make sure that harmonizes with all your other moral beliefs before you act on it? McGrath thinks, no, that's too weird. This is making the process too complicated. But the method says your beliefs aren't fully justified until you've gone through reflective equilibrium. And so it seems like, well, the method's a little bit too demanding. I mean, sometimes you just know stuff, even without working out all the implications with all your other moral beliefs. Okay, so those are a couple worries about reflective equilibrium. Let me sum that up if you got lost in there. The main worry, I think, is about the considered judgments that you're supposed to start with. What are the rules for considered judgments? Like, where do those come from, and what can they be, and what are they not allowed to be? Okay, so reflective equilibrium, which we saw was the most popular method of practicing ethicists, there are big questions about it. Here's 3 further puzzles which McGrath now raises. One is this problem of deference. Look, most of our moral beliefs, it seems like, we just picked up from the way we were raised. People taught them to us, and we believed them. Mom taught you don't hit other kids, and you believed her, right? Is that okay? That's the question. You might think, of course it's okay. Look, Mom also taught me that Greenville's the capital of South Carolina. I never questioned that either. That's perfectly legitimate. And my teachers taught me that a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and I just believed it. And they also taught me that, objects fall towards the center of the earth at 9.86 meters per second squared. I never replicated Newton's experiments, but I just believed them, and that's perfectly legitimate. So why can't I do the same thing with morality? Mom taught me not to hit other kids, and that's legit. Okay, that seems plausible. On the other hand, some people might have this feeling that, wait a second, you can't just, your moral beliefs are different somehow. You got to arrive at those yourself. Somehow moral beliefs need to be autonomous. Now, autonomy means like self-rule. And the idea is that yeah, I need to be the one who determines what the moral rules are. I need to be the one who has personally gone through the process of identifying the moral truth. And so this is the question: is it okay for you to just accept moral beliefs from others? Does that count as knowledge, or is there something wrong with that? And if there is something wrong with it, this just raises the question with even more acuteness. Where are you going to get your moral knowledge from? What will be your process for figuring things out for yourself? Next problem, disagreement. Let's say that you disagree about some moral problem with your friend, and you have every reason to think that your friend is just as sincere and just as thoughtful and just as intelligent as you are. You both know all the same facts, but you have come to different conclusions. Should that lower your confidence in your own conclusion? I mean, you can't both be right. That would break all the laws of logic. You can't both be right. Let's step back from the moral case and just think about like a math problem. You and your friend are doing math together. You know your friend is just as smart as you are. You both copied the same problem out of the book, and you worked it independently, and you came up with different answers, and you're both confident in your answers. Well, and you know that your friend is just as good as you at math. Should you then lose confidence in your answer? You were sure of it before your friend said, wait a minute, I got something different. Should you be less sure of it now? It seems like in most cases, we would be less sure of our own answers if someone that we considered an epistemic peer disagreed with us. Well, in morality, in so many of our most deeply held moral views, it seems like there are people out there who appear to be sincere and appear to be just as intelligent and well-informed and thoughtful as we are, but who disagree with us. Does that mean that we should therefore suspend our moral beliefs because epistemic peers disagree with us? If not, why not? We would in other cases, wouldn't we? Well, maybe the worry is that I don't think anyone else really is an epistemic peer. They don't either. I know better than them because I'm more thoughtful and more intelligent, or there are things that I know that they don't know that are relevant here, or you think they're not really being sincere. Those are possibilities, but if you think, no, there really are people who are sincere and well-informed and disagree with me, then why doesn't that make you doubt everything that all of your moral beliefs about which people disagree with you? Problem. Final problem, evolutionary debunking. Here's the worry. Let's step away from our controversial beliefs where there's a lot of disagreement. Let's try to take the beliefs where there is the most agreement, worldwide agreement on certain moral principles. I don't know what those are. McGrath thinks that some of them are, for example, parents should protect their young, and things like that. Everybody agrees with that. Maybe you shouldn't randomly kill people. Here's the worry. The worry is the best explanation, it seems like, for why we would believe such a thing is simply that natural selection and evolutionary processes selected for those kinds of beliefs. A species is most likely to survive if they have these sorts of beliefs. For example, the belief that they should protect their young and that they should not randomly kill each other and stuff like that. Okay, let's say that's true. Now, by the way, there's one point that I was scratching my head over with McGrath. She acts like this only affects some of our moral beliefs, but assuming if evolution is true, then all of our beliefs are the products of evolution. So it seems to me that this question about whether evolution debunks our beliefs applies not just to a narrow strand of certain moral beliefs, but to all beliefs. So the question is this: if I have these beliefs I have because I'm the product of evolution, does that somehow undermine the reliability of those beliefs? And the worry is that it does, because evolution doesn't select for true beliefs. It selects for beliefs that are most likely to make you successfully pass your genes along. And those may or may not be true. For example, now you may think, wait a minute. How would false beliefs help you reproduce? Well, let's see. One can imagine many things, but let me give you one common example. Let's say that you have to jump across a wide gorge in order to escape a predator. Well, maybe you're more likely to make the jump if you believe you can make the jump. Or you're going to fight with a predator. Now, are you most likely to fight successfully if you think, I'm going to lose? Or if you think, this could go 50-50. Or who's going to be the best fighter? Maybe the one who thinks, I'm going to dominate this grizzly bear. Your odds of surviving against the grizzly bear may be low in any case, but they're going to be higher if you think you can do it, that you're going to dominate. It seems like this, like you think about in sports. I remember playing football, the guys who could hit you the hardest were the guys who believed they were the hardest hitters, and they would never hesitate right before they hit you. There's something about the mental ability, the mental confidence, whether it's rational or not, that gives you an advantage. So maybe evolution could very well wire with a whole bunch of beliefs which have no connection with truth, but which help us to reproduce. Okay, so if evolution selects not for truth, but for reproduction, that seems like it might give us a reason to doubt the reliability of all the beliefs that are produced by evolution. This applies particularly to widely held moral principles, but I think generalizes also to all other beliefs. Well, we've just been raising a whole lot of problems in your life about metaethics. Sorry about that there's not more, there may or may not be answers, but the issue is there are no widely agreed upon answers among contemporary ethicists. So I leave it for you to think about these things and to sort out your own views.